Great. Well, welcome everybody to today's WeConnect International webinar. My name is Maggie Berry and I'm the Executive Director for WeConnect International here in Europe. And I'm delighted that you've joined us for today's webinar, The Future of B2B Marketing. Our presenters today are Zoe Merchant and Martha Orgels from Bright. They're one of our certified women's business enterprises at WeConnect International, and they're going to be discussing the findings from a survey of over 150 B2B marketeers on how they've survived the pandemic, what their priorities and plans are for 2021 in order to thrive in the space, and what the future of B2B marketing looks like. Now, we're very privileged because these survey results aren't actually going to be public and published until next week. So Zoe and Martha have just asked me to say to you all, please don't share any of the information that is going to be kind of spoken about today until at least next Friday. We're not going to be sharing a copy of the slides, but the Bright team have said that they will certainly be sharing some useful resources afterwards around agile marketing for marketeers. So we'll make sure to send them out to everybody. As always, if I can ask everybody, apart from our presenters, just to stay on mute and to use the chat functionality if you've got any questions. We're probably going to keep all the questions to the end, but if there is something urgent, please certainly do put it in the box and I'll be keeping an eye open for that. Zoe and Martha are probably going to talk for about 40 to 45 minutes with time at the end. And as I said, we are recording, so you will be able to listen back to it. So just a big thank you to all of you for listening in today. And if you're listening back to the recording, and Zoe and Martha, thank you very much for presenting. So it's over to the Bright team. Yeah, big thanks. Looking forward to it. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thanks, Maggie. Yes, thank you. That was a great intro. No pressure. So as Maggie said, our survey findings are embargoed at the moment. We wanted to use this opportunity to test run our presentation, which we're going to be running again next Friday, and also get any feedback you guys have on how we can sharpen it up. So we really appreciate you all joining, and hopefully you'll get some useful insights that you can apply to your own businesses. So as Maggie said, we are a B2B marketing consultancy. We specialise in working with mainly tech and consultancy firms, professional service firms, membership associations, that kind of business. And each year, over the last couple of years, we've run a survey to kind of understand the key trends within B2B marketing, and also to really identify what you can do as a B2B marketer or as a business leader in order to enable your marketing to be more successful. So obviously this year's survey was particularly interesting given that we're in a pandemic. So what did that mean, and what was the impact compared to the year before? So quick introductions. I'm Zoe, the MD at Bright. As mentioned, we're a B2B consultancy. We were based in London, but obviously now we're based all over the place currently, with the team working remotely. And we're a fairly small enterprise. I've been a WeConnect certified member for about 6 months, and we found the opportunities to work with other women-led businesses and to get in front of other businesses to showcase our services has been great. So we really appreciate this opportunity to obviously get to know everyone a bit more and for you to get to know us.
Yep, and I'm Martha. I'm the marketing manager at Bright. So I work internally on Bright's own marketing. And I have also a background in qualitative and quantitative data. So that's been put to very good use putting together this survey over the past couple of months.
Okay, so what we'd like to cover today, how we went about our survey, who replied, and then moving on into the trends that we identified from the responses, a little look at the year-on-year analysis from the survey, the 2019 survey results, and then how do you take some of those trends forward in your own business. So how to build a more resilient and adaptable marketing model, some tips there. So very quickly, just to get a sense of who's here on the call, it'd be really great if we could run a quick poll and understand how confident everyone's feeling about their own marketing efforts and initiatives. Maggie, does that the results pop up?
Yep, I think they will do. We've got nearly 82% of people have voted. I'll give it 5 more seconds, 6 more seconds, and then
Great.
I will close it on 30 seconds. And I think they should all just pop up. All right, I'm going to close it now. Hold on. Lots of
Great, somewhat. Okay, so everyone's feeling a little bit in the middle at the moment. I think that's probably to be expected given what we're all experiencing. Great to see nearly a quarter of you feeling pretty good about your marketing, and then obviously a few people are probably not quite sure. So hopefully we can provide some tips, as we said, as well, about how you can take some of the lessons that we've identified in the trends forward in your own enterprise. So I'm quickly introducing a bit more about the survey to set some context before we move into the trends. So what is behind the numbers? So what did we set out to understand? So we wanted to understand more about the B2B marketing landscape and how it's changed over the past year, what the challenges were that B2B marketers are facing and how they've had to deal with the pandemic. And then how are B2B marketers responding to these challenges and being successful? Where have they struggled? And then what does 2021 look like for the B2B community, marketing community? So why we think the survey is important. At Bright, we're all about testing, learning and building on success. So what better way to prepare for yet another probably turbulent year than reviewing what worked well last year and taking forward anything that we can to help marketers be more successful in sharing that knowledge. So as we move into the second year of surveying, we really wanted to compare the findings. As we said, 2020 was an extraordinary year, and we want to know what that meant in terms of the impact of the pandemic and how that's going to affect marketing in the future. Sorry, too fast.
So who responded? Like Maggie said, it was over 150 senior marketers who responded to our survey, and it felt like a really good sample of go-getters in the marketing world. So 62 of the respondents were C-level and above, 55% of respondents were based in the UK and the US. And in terms of the industry, while the respondent base spanned across a variety of industries, the majority were within tech. So the other top 5 industries, well, the whole top 5 industries were information technology and services, computer software, marketing and advertising, professional services and financial services. And the size of the organisations ranged from SMB to enterprise, and we defined this by the number of employees. So 75% had less than 500 employees and 25% had over 500 employees.
Thanks, Martha. So after that brief intro, we're going to move into the trends that we identified and the overall theme for the year ahead. So I think it's an opportunity to just take a step back and celebrate the resilience that marketers have shown in the last year. You know, it's not been easy in any function or any industry across whatever you do. I think marketers have shown a lot of resilience, and the survey really demonstrates that. So I think that's an opportunity to celebrate, probably, and it might have felt very tough at times, but people have been triumphant in the face of adversity. Not every story has a happy ending, of course, but many lessons have been learned about how to be adaptable and deal with radical change. So I think that there's an opportunity to really recognise the grit that marketers have demonstrated during the pandemic, and also how hard everyone has worked to support their businesses in their endeavours. So as marketers and business leaders, I think we can all agree one of the main objectives right now is to build that resilience into our own environments and adapt. We want a marketing model that's going to support our business throughout 2021 and beyond, and align to our business goals and targets. In order to not just focus on survival this year, what can we do differently to thrive? And how can we go about it? So the survey identified 5 areas that marketers have used in order to accomplish great things, and areas that you can focus on this year in terms of improving your marketing effectiveness, optimizing what you already have, and becoming more resilient. We need to be adaptable, customer-centric, data-driven, resourceful, and content-led in our marketing. And what does that mean? Let's talk about these trends in a bit more detail.
Yep, so trend one is adaptability. So one thing this year has taught us all is that change is the only constant, and the same goes for B2B marketing. So learning to adapt at pace was one of the biggest learnings, well, it was the biggest learning for B2B marketers during the pandemic. Adaptability was essential in terms of being able to pivot to a new market demand at pace, accelerate digital transformation faster than expected, and also respond quicker to the constant change. So with some organisations, the pace of response to adapt within their marketing department actually occurred so quickly that other departments ended up looking to the marketing department to lead them through the pandemic, which is great. And B2B marketers reported having to adapt in so many areas. So they had to adapt their strategy to suit reduced budgets and resource, replace in-person events and networking with digital alternatives, rework acquisition methods to respond to delayed decision-making and longer buying cycles, and adapt their marketing approaches to engage with prospects in what's become quite an has become an overly saturated digital marketing landscape. So how do you increase your adaptability? So over 80% of the B2B marketers reported that cross-functional collaboration had helped them to adapt at speed. So cross-functionality in your teams allows for linear communications, so you can quickly pivot and flex to market shifts and change as a cohort. So 75% also said that agile methods had helped them to adapt their marketing during the pandemic. Agile means your marketing plan is dynamic and it's responsive. As a result, you can shorten the time it takes for you to get to market and adapt to a new situation, and you can also test, learn and build as you go along. And that means you can improve your strategy at a much faster pace. And this was another huge lesson, not just for B2B marketers, but for everyone, is that we can adapt at pace. So a recent report by McKinsey, which was on LinkedIn, showed that many companies had planned 1 year for implementation of remote working, and it actually ended up taking 11 days. So we can adapt and we need to adapt.
Yes, thanks, Martha. So moving into the second trend, and one that's very dear to my heart.
I'm going to have it.
Oh, sorry, did someone have a question?
Sorry, if you can use the chat function for the questions and then I'll keep an eye on it. Please carry on. Sorry, thanks.
Okay, no problem. So customer centricity. So obviously it's very important to put the customer at the heart of whatever you do within your marketing endeavours. This will certainly pay back dividends. So in terms of what it means and has meant to marketers during the pandemic, retention has been critical in 2020. The reasons behind that, obviously with the pandemic, there's been less opportunities for many firms around lead generation. Firms have struggled to find new business in a truncated market, as well as a lack of in-person events and the usual networking opportunities that the sales and marketing team often rely on in order to drive new leads and opportunities. So it's not surprising that customer centricity has begun to take more of the spotlight. It's not new, it's something that marketers need to get to grips with. The pandemic has just increased the necessity for marketers to be more customer focused. And when we talk about customer, we're not just talking about the customers you have today, we're talking about the prospects that you want to engage, build relationships with, and convert. It's important that the research showed that B2B marketers who gave their customers the opportunity to come together and prospects an opportunity to share ideas and gather support saw the return in their retention and acquisition. So what this meant was there was a rise in tactics such as obviously virtual events, which we're all very familiar with, like today, but community-based marketing has certainly been on the ascendancy, along with account-based marketing. All of those models are really about tailoring and being personal. It's not always easy. Our research showed that B2B marketers face challenges. Juggling new or unexpected customer needs was one of the areas that the pandemic threw up. As well as a reduced demand for products and services, attrition of existing clients was higher, hence the focus on retention, and longer buying cycles and delays in decision making made acquisition much harder. So the importance of learning and rethinking that customer journey. So how do B2B marketers improve their customer centricity? The research found is about spending time listening, understanding your customers and prospects, investing in and adapting to their needs, really understand their pains, the gains and the motivations for adopting your products or services, and focus on articulating the value of this. You need to show that value rather than just trying to sell to them, and try to stay one step ahead of your customers to create repeat demand. It's important even in difficult times to be innovative. Customer centricity is set to stay for 2021 and beyond, which I'm glad is the case. 50% of B2B marketers will be focusing on improving their customer experience through their communication, the channels they're using, and the content that they publish and produce. It's really important to have an integrated approach and in order to maximize retention and to understand the buyer journey and the potential customer lifetime value. And if these are terms that are unfamiliar to you, then that's something to think about working with your marketing team to understand more and really getting to grips with in order to become more customer centric. So on to our third trend.
Yep, so content still remains supreme. So we're seeing this year on year. The research showed that a third of B2B marketers will use content to improve their position in the market this year. And some B2B marketers even said that they felt like there were big opportunities to stand out from the crowd with creative campaigns in what can quite often be perceived as a boring market. Others will focus on the tone and the cadence of communications and producing marketing content that revolves around thought leadership. So 50% of all B2B marketers recognise the power of content for engaging customers and prospects. And that was about developing content strategy and delivery. And that's a top 3 priority for B2B marketers in 2021. So the need to articulate value rather than being feature-led and just selling is essential. And remember, content isn't just about the written word and images. We're seeing an explosion in areas such as video content, interactive experiences, and augmented and virtual reality. So these more engaging and interactive content forms perform extremely well once you've got people consuming it. And they also allow you to mine a lot more data so you can work with richer insights into your target audience. So how do you get people to consume your content? That's often a question we get asked. And again, it goes back to that point about content, not just for content's sake. It has to align with your buyer journey so you can reach hard to target valuable prospects with targeted and relevant content. And also, how can you improve your content strategies and delivery? So 45% of marketers felt more confident creating content in a crisis, so the pandemic, with agile marketing. Some said the crisis had reinforced the need for communicating with purpose and focus on how to help their customers and prospects deal with their response to the pandemic instead of just selling to them. And you need to test your messaging, delve into your insights, and you need to really understand which content performs best at the different stages of your buyer journey. Make good use of your content in terms of shattering it and repurposing it to get the most value. So sweat your assets, especially as we're being asked to do more with less at the moment, and try different channels. So to help you better connect with your customers and highlight your value to your customer. That's really important, especially at the moment. All of this ties you're also personalizing and segmenting your comms and content according to your buyer. So that's something you need to always keep in mind.
Thanks, Martha. So moving on to trend 4. So smarketers, as seems to be a new term. Not sure I like it, but smarter marketers are data driven. So 2020, leading B2B marketers were harnessing consistently quality data insights to understand the changes they needed to make to their own activities in order to adapt and meet the market requirements as it changed. However, the survey found vast majority of B2B marketers, in particular those that may be more traditional in their approach, have found making better use of their data and insights was a big challenge for them during the pandemic. And this was closely followed by the faster adoption of digital capabilities, which they may not have embarked upon previously or had been looking to bring on online at a slower rate. So that these new digital ways of working and channels that they were taking advantage of gave them more access to data, which in turn can provide more insight in order for you to test, learn and improve what works best, and underpin more data-driven decision-making. And data-driven decision-making is really a critical success factor. It's all about making sure you're not just looking at superficial metrics. So getting beyond those vanity metrics and really understanding what's performing and the outcomes it produces in order to fine-tune and optimize what you're doing. We know that B2B marketers are facing an increasingly saturated and evolving digital landscape, partly brought about by the pandemic, but also the advent of digital marketing becoming the mainstay for B2B marketers. You're having to juggle a huge variety of platforms and channels, and they're all bursting with analytics. It can be overwhelming for the B2B marketers that we surveyed and also disparate. So it's very poorly connected in many cases. So it's often difficult to focus on and measure what matters. So how do you get beyond that and really get some value from your insight and get to grips with your data? Well, the answer, unlike traditional marketers, is 47% of those that used agile marketing methods were able to make data-driven decisions, which then kept them on track in 2020. And a whopping 94% felt more confident, demonstrating their ROI to their leadership teams. It's clear that marketing agility requires data-driven decisions. Traditional marketers also agreed with that, and 60% felt that data-driven decision-making would be one of the biggest benefits of adopting more agile marketing practices moving through this year. So data is a key discipline for 2021. Measuring marketing performance through better use of data and interpreting insights is a top priority for all marketers. How you use your data and how you interpret the insight will essentially determine your success in future periods of disruption. Now is the time for marketers to really get to grips with this and put in place best practice. Marketers that are better at data management and interpreting valuable insights from this will be more resilient and able to demonstrate success, whilst continually improving their activities and programs of work to meet their business KPIs and aligned business goals.
Yeah, so the other thing that came through in the survey was resourcefulness, particularly when we're looking at less resource and budget. So 1 in 3 B2B marketers experienced reduced budget and resources this year. And this was the joint biggest challenge for B2B marketers, along with making better use of their data. But as we know, B2B marketers are resilient and we rise to the challenge. So marketing teams who can solve these problems and go to market, even with reduced budget and resources, will be the ones to not only survive, but thrive in the ongoing disruption. So resourcefulness is different to adaptability. Adaptability is a response to the environment, but resourcefulness isn't necessarily adaptive. It's about working smarter, not harder with what you have. And of course, we know that resourcefulness plays a key part in the main theme for 2021, building resilience. So continue to be resourceful, optimize what you have, and over time you will build that resilience with continuous improvement. 79% also found that adopting agile methods helped them with being more resourceful. So start small and build over the mid to long term meant that marketers were able to maximize their output from their resource and capability that they had. And testing, learning and building meant that marketers were able to improve and adapt low performing, high cost activity quickly. The smartest of marketers were able to blend internal resource with external consultancy or agency resource, so they could scale up when they needed to, and bring in capability to learn from in terms of knowledge. So this way you can bring the skills you need when you need them. And if you want to move this in-house, you can then learn from your external resources and scale up if you want to. What was really nice to see in our survey was how bright the future looks for B2B marketers. So a massive 81% said they felt positive about the future of B2B marketing. So while B2B marketers will probably continue to have to do less with, do more with less budget and resource, it is important that we become much better at setting out a clear business case for activity to our leadership. And our answer to this reduced resource and budget is to start small and engage customers with high energy and curiosity. You don't need massive budgets or giant teams. As we said before, it's about working smarter, not harder. So that's our key tip, I think, for 2021.
Yeah, so we're going to have a look at how to build that resilience and adaptability and what that means going forward. So we mentioned that we ran our survey in 2019, so we thought it would be really useful to kind of compare what's happened to B2B marketing and the trends that are moving up, those that are less important, and the new entries. So I'll try and do it like a top of the pops kind of rundown, but we'll see how we get on. So the first area of trends that we looked at, methods. So agile ways of working is certainly going up. Agile marketing adoption has dramatically increased in the past year by a further 23%, and it continues to grow. Last year, only 45% of the marketers were surveyed were agile marketers and have been practicing agile marketing for more than a year. This year's survey showed that more than 63% of the marketers were practicing agile and had been doing so for the last year or so. So there's also an increase in B2B marketers that are looking to adopt agile over this coming year. Over 50% of B2B marketers are really getting to grips with agile ways of working. And there's much less focus on ad hoc or traditional marketing methods.
Yeah, and then in terms of the challenges, cross-functional collaboration has continued to be a key challenge for B2B marketers, even more so this year. And making better use of your data to create insight has remained a key challenge. Particularly traditional marketers are looking to become more data-driven in their decision-making this year. And as we've seen in the trends that we've spoken about, with the pandemic has come new challenges in the form of reduced budget and resource and juggling new or unexpected customer needs.
So moving swiftly on to what are B2B marketers' priorities. So acquisition is up. As we said, it was a challenge in 2020 to really get traction and velocity into your sales pipelines. So even though we're in a pandemic, B2B marketers' priorities have remained quite similar. Comes to data-driven decision-making and content generation. As we've already touched on, there's major trends in those areas for this year. The better use of data and insight combined with more value-led content and personalization. This is becoming even more important as retention moves into the list, and obviously to build brand awareness. Prioritization dropping down the list is a consequence of more marketers adopting agile ways of working. They're getting better at prioritizing and are more comfortable with that kind of test, learn and build on success in order to set the direction of travel to meet their business targets. And then finally,
and then we also asked the agile marketers what the benefits were from agile marketing. So the benefits of agile seem to remain the same for agile marketers, showing it's not just a short-term trend. So agile marketers remained more confident than traditional marketers in demonstrating their return of investment to their leadership team. So as we said before, that had increased to a 94%. And other key benefits that have become even more pivotal was adapting at pace and the benefit of data-driven decision-making and faster time to market. And then new entries came in the form of streamlined process and team management, and also the confidence to create new and responsive forms of content, which I think came about due to the pandemic.
Certainly been accelerated. So A bit about agile marketing, given that it's driving a lot of the more successful marketers, and how it could apply to your business. What is it? Yeah, obviously, providing more business agility has been a critical success factor for most businesses as they've moved through the pandemic. So we've seen that experienced B2B marketers who adopt agile methods in their marketing have seen those clear benefits when it comes to being more adaptable, more resourceful, making more data-driven decisions, and having more confidence when creating the right kinds of engaging content during the pandemic. The organizations who have shifted to a more agile focused marketing model have gained revenue uplifts of around 20 to 40% according to a McKinsey study in the latter part of last year. That's a pretty powerful stat. It's well suited to turbulent times as it's based on a test, learn and improve approach, which allows you to go to market quickly and adapt at pace. So when you need to understand how your target audience is going to respond to your collaterals, messages, or the channels you're choosing to adopt, you can start small with a subsegment of your target audience and validate your thinking. You can even build in a validation phase where you might talk to some friendly, either customer decision makers is a good place to start if you have strong relationships with your client base, or even prospects that you've had conversations with over the last 6 months where you've got an established relationship and you want to ask them whether the ideas you have from a marketing perspective are engaging. People really like to be asked, and we certainly found that for our clients, those that have validated their thinking as they go have had much greater success, and obviously it's a much leaner way of working. Agile, if it requires you to utilize and analyze your data more, so obviously you do need to think about KPIs as you move through an agile marketing cycle in order to make decisions quickly, and it means that you can identify areas of underperformance and scale based on short sprint cycles to meet longer term goals. These sprints allow you room to adapt at pace, as well as allowing you a faster time to market to get yourselves ahead of your competitors, which is vital as we see B2B marketers struggle in truncated and saturated markets and channels. The cross-functional element of agile marketing is key. As the survey has shown, it allows organizations to communicate and work at pace. So rather than siloed teams where communication is slow and then action becomes slower, cross-functional teams mean communication is easier and everyone's on the same page from the start. It's definitely a more sustainable and leaner way of working. And all this leads to one thing, being able to build more resilience and support your business as you grow. So agile marketing is very much focused on the disciplines of agile project management. So setting out with a hypothesis, so your idea generation at the start, being able to test and validate early on so that you can get some early results, whether that's from testing on a solo channel, such as sending an email would be a good way to test a message or offer. You can often A/B test your subject lines, you can personalize, you can not personalize. One of our clients, set out to understand the value of personalization to their marketing efforts, which would seem common sense, but they were struggling to do that. So we set out to test it via a simple solo email that was personalized to one group of decision makers, and then a more generic, less personalized version sent to the other group. And obviously the personalized one won in terms of results. Open rates were much better, click-through rates were much stronger, and conversion rates on the website performed better. So you can do that with simple testing at a small scale. You can also, social channels are great for that because it's a digital channel, you get a lot of data back, so you can test new messages, new proposition ideas, new calls to action in a fairly discreet way. So that minimum viable activity is really important to set the scene, and then learning from it. using the data you have and really asking, why does that matter? What does that mean? And then improving what you're doing and scaling that across other channels where you've got success, where messages have worked and resonated, and then building up beyond that. And then again, it flows back into a new cycle of testing and learning. So agile marketing is not just about going quickly, it's really about testing and learning and building on success. And it is as, oops, sorry, ooh, mouse happy. It's all about taking down the barriers within your organization. So as I said, B2B marketers reported they're facing the same barriers as last year when it came to adopting agile marketing. These included a lack of time and resource, a lack of know-how around adopting agile ways of working, a lack of the tools they felt they needed or the training in order to get going, and a lack of support from senior management or buy-in from the leadership team. One aspect of agile marketing that I think is important to think about as business owners and leaders potentially is to make sure we give our marketers and our teams autonomy and give them permission to fail, because failure leads to more success ultimately. The benefits of agile marketing is that you're not doing things at a huge scale whilst you're testing and validating, so you can feel confident. And you know, you're testing small aspects of different elements within the marketing program, so allowing your marketers a bit more freedom in order to be a bit more curious, to really test, learn and build is important. And as business leaders, we have to accept that's part of the process in order to reach those higher, more successful targets. So the best way to get buy-in as well for marketers who have struggled with getting agile marketing adoption is to start to measure the marketing impact more closely, get to grips with data, put together solid business cases. So if you're unclear on how to pull together a business case to demonstrate the outcomes you're going to drive, then that's something that Bright can certainly help you with in terms of just having a 30-minute catch up to give you some pointers. But also, again, it goes back to that, showing that you're starting small, you're testing and building on success. Over time, you'll be able to demonstrate that ROI, and the leadership will become more invested in what you're doing. It's data that allow you to improve performance, so you need to get to grips and understand how to generate insight. And we've seen from the survey that agile marketers are more confident with their reporting and demonstrating ROI to their leadership team. So track and measure as much as you can, but learn how to synthesize and analyze data to get insight from it. And then, in summary, 3 things to consider as you move through this year for your marketing. Align marketing to your business goals, set clear KPIs. Really hard to be data driven and measure what matters if you don't have KPIs that you've agreed with the business. Build a cross-functional team. This is a collective effort. You know, businesses that are most successful collaborate well. Cross-functional teaming is not just about marketing, and it's pretty common sense. Most marketers are already trying to align with their sales engine and business development teams in order to drive success. But you also need to think about, like, who our subject matter experts are, the product owners or the customer service team, which are talking to the clients day to day, and who could give you valuable insight into what people want from your products and services going forward. And really support that curiosity in terms of a data-driven mindset, so that we can really demonstrate success and continually improve on what we're doing. So that concludes the survey summary of what we found. And this is just a little bit about Bright. I don't want to do a sales pitch because I know how boring that is, but just for clarity, we are a B2B marketing consultancy. we use agile marketing in everything we do, and we work with companies to help them become more agile and responsive in what they're delivering. So data-driven, curiosity, all the things we've been talking about is very much built into how we work, and that alignment to business goals. We're a high energy consultancy, and we'd love to speak to anyone from the community here today to get feedback on this presentation we've just given. But also, if you want some pointers on your own marketing efforts, we'd be really happy to have a 30-minute catch up. So do just ping us a note, and we can talk through some scenarios that are more specific to your endeavours. Or if you're thinking about a new marketing strategy that you need to deploy to meet your goals this year, then we can give you some ideas on how marketing can help you with that. So I'm going to hand back to Maggie now. I think there might be some questions. So yeah, let's see what people would like to know more about.
Brilliant. Zoe and Martha, thank you very much. Yes, there's a number of questions, and I know there was also a few questions submitted in advance, and maybe as we go through the questions, others of you will have some comments. No, brilliant. You've very interesting survey results, and I also think the bit at the end around some practical tips and advice is also incredibly helpful. I know for me, when I think about stuff that we do at WeConnect, I'm like, where do we get the data? What are we tracking? Are we tracking the right things? So I'm just going to work my way through the questions that were submitted. Actually, so Jay was asking, and I think you slightly answered this, what's the best way to get feedback on content that you're putting out, to your audience when you don't really have, there's not really any budget to kind of properly do any research? How do you find out from them what's engaging, what they'd like to see more of, what they don't like? And I think you gave some advice there around maybe just doing it with a small group, or if you trusted people rather than trying to get the entire network. But any other insight around getting feedback on content?
Yeah, I mean, you could get some really good indicative feedback from just picking up the phone to people like your existing customers, as I've said. It doesn't need to be like a big, huge kind of validation exercise, especially if you're starting small. So, before you embark on creating content, I would suggest that you have a synopsis, you really have a kind of different ways of positioning your ideas and the value of those ideas for the target you're trying to reach, and then talk to some of those people who are the target. So that could be your existing customers, because you've got hopefully good relationships with those, but also you could do that for your network. I'm sure that WeConnect might have people in your target audience that they might be able to connect you with to validate thinking before you go ahead and create those pieces of content, because obviously content creation is time consuming generally, and it can be expensive if you're getting into like interactive experiences, tools and video. That said, if you just take a pause before you start the process and just test those ideas, talk to a few people, you can get some really good feedback to help you make those content pieces stronger and more relevant and resonant to your audiences. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask people's opinion before you go ahead and build out those content pieces. I'd say do it before you create, to save yourself a lot of heartache. There's nothing worse as a marketer or a business owner than putting a lot of time and effort into a piece of content that nobody reads or responds to. So it's well worth having those conversations before you go ahead. So yeah, create a synopsis.
Yeah, one thing we've actually used for our boot camps as well that's really, really quick and easy is to do something like a poll on LinkedIn. So if you're looking at putting together a large amount of content for something like a webinar or a survey, for example, then a really good way to get some feedback on that is just to run a quick poll and see what people's priorities are, or see what is most important to them.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you. Okay, then the next question, Annie, I'm hoping we because I think you posted that question, it was like, can we define agile marketing clearly? Bit confused by what it means. And then almost literally that question came up. Zoe, then you had your slide, which exactly broke the different steps of agile marketing. So I'm hoping, Annie, that we've answered that question for you. Carolyn, you were asking about what are some really good practical examples of the new normal for B2B marketing. I don't know if there's anything else you share in that.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting.
Like, I don't know.
Yes, it's an interesting one. I mean, things that we're seeing from our clients, obviously we're working mainly in the tech and professional service arena, is obviously the heavy reliance on digital channels, particularly LinkedIn. the LinkedIn, I know it's just one channel, but it has become very critical to social selling and advertising. They've got some great advertising mechanisms that you can explore even as a small business. They're very cost effective, so things like LinkedIn conversation ads, I would say, would be worth checking out, as well as the more lead gen adverts. Virtual events obviously is a new norm. I'm not 100% convinced sometimes that people think through their virtual event strategy. It's not always the best idea to just put an event online that you would have typically held in person. You really need to think about what you're trying to achieve through using an event, and whether that still is the best channel or tactic to meet your end goal. And I just think that it's just everyone is quite fatigued at the moment on the virtual event side of things. So they've really got to have a bit of a wow factor, and they've got to be more engaging. Some virtual events I'm sure we've all been to that have been less than exhilarating. So the new normal, I would say, is really about, again, understanding what your audience that you're trying to reach, where they are spending their time, whether that's LinkedIn or Instagram or other social media channels, or whether they're still really interested in joining a more community-based event like Reconnect, to get insight and ideas. So you've got to understand your customers before you decide what you're going to do with your marketing, and where you want to be seen or where you need to be seen.
Yeah,
I think this is good as well for creativity. So I think we need to not forget that point of the fact that the new normal for B2B marketing is getting more creative. So be ahead with that, be more creative, use those interactive platforms. I've seen great examples of people using interactive 360 rooms to run surveys and get feedback and stuff like that. So I think it's about being ahead of that new normal as well, and jumping on things that are more creative, that stand out in a really saturated environment.
I'd agree with that.
On quite nicely to the next question, which is are there any impactful digital marketing ideas that you can use on a low budget? So I don't know if any of those, maybe this is something that we can put in a follow-up email. If you've seen some stuff out there, you're like, this is good, have a look at this. I don't know if you've got any insight in that, because sometimes it's just knowing what you could use.
Yeah, I guess it's knowing what good looks like. So I think what we've seen, as Martha said, is a lot of clients are building interactive tools, ranging from the extremely feature and function rich augmented reality experiences, which are very expensive to build still in an effective way anyway, but give you lots of data and insight. And I really do have that wow factor too. And more, you can get off the shelf apps now, which is a low cost way of building quizzes and interactive ways that you can engage your audience. I think one of the most basic things you can do is take a good hard look at your own website, because you want your user experience on your own website to be as good as possible. It's your shop front. So again, that's probably something to think about, validating with your target audience and getting some feedback, whether you just sit with them on a call as they navigate through your site and talk about what they find great about the information and experience you offer, or whether you're creating fiction and making it hard for them to buy from you. So yeah, I think you've got to, before you build out more and more exciting tooling, I would just make sure your basics are fit for purpose.
Indeed. Can I just ask a quick question? We around websites and how many customers, shall we say, access information by websites, and customers accessing information through other platforms, say like LinkedIn. Is there any kind of overview around, actually a customer is 95% more likely to find you on an external platform, not your own website anymore? Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I think one of our boot camps recently, we touched on, the buyer journey that people tend to take, particularly for our clients, which are generally complex, high value products and services. Much of the early stage of that journey is obviously digital and is unknown to you, the vendor of those services or products. So I think there's a lot of stats flying around about this, and some of them have been proved to be flawed. Actually, there's one famous stat that says 70% of the buyer journey happens before you know about these people, and that's been proven to be not true. Yeah, I guess in answer to your question, the biggest channel by far that we've seen grow over the last year has been LinkedIn. We've seen a huge growth, and it's been very successful, if I'm honest. So there's no like silver bullet, like magic new thing. LinkedIn being, if you're in B2B, you need to be on LinkedIn, you need to be using the advertising and options for engaging with your target audience. Social selling is something we have done a lot of work on, which is a new term to some people. It's where you're using LinkedIn to prospect, to identify the right people in those accounts you're looking to engage, and then building a one-to-one dialogue through messaging, trying to get them to connect and then message with you to get to a point where you can have a conversation. Yeah. So it's not rocket science, but it is labor intensive. So there are tools out there that can help you with that. That said, you definitely don't want to come across as being robotic or automated. So be careful with those tools that promise lots of connections in a short space of time, and are using basically automation tooling. So you just have to really understand how you deploy them for your business.
No, I really have. Okay, so what I'll certainly do, if there's resources you can share around some of those tools, Martha, you could example things that people could try. We'll put them in the follow-up email. Lisa's just making a comment. She's realized that she was doing, using that kind of test and learn, trial and error, and you can do it with small businesses. That's just a comment. Julie, I think it said, where would you source or buy in data to start a B2B campaign? There's a couple of comments, but is there any advice you can share around kind of buying in data?
That's a difficult one, because I wouldn't want to endorse a specific data vendor, and actually some of them are really bad. So again, you've got to be really careful with that. If you are running activity through LinkedIn, you can harvest marketable data by using their lead gen advertising. You can collect email addresses, etc. So then you can market to them, because you have to just by collecting it, they've shown intent, so you fulfill your GDPR obligations. In terms of buying like bulk data, there are obviously very good data vendors in the market. It can be very expensive, so think long and hard about the people you're trying to reach, and be very clear on the target criteria. So that you can get good quality data. I guess some tips I would say, rather than recommending specific vendors, is make sure you look closely at their data replacement and quality policies. So what do I mean by that? So if you bulk buy a list of data, and say you've got email addresses probably being a critical piece of information in there, if those email addresses, you need to understand, like, how did they source them? Are they opt-in, and have they been validated? Because there's the risk around putting them into your CRM, such as HubSpot. If you get too high a bounce rate, you get locked out of your systems and tools, which is really frustrating, and a lot of effort to get unlocked, because you're breaching their data usage policies. So the other thing is working with the vendor to say, well, if this email addresses or contact data proved to be invalid, what do they do about replacing it for a certain period of time after you've bought that data, so that you can get fresh data? There's some really good data subscription services now, and that's quite a good place to look to invest budget if you need to get like a reasonable amount of data into your CRM in the short to medium term. You might want to look at a subscription service rather than just buying a bulk set of data, so that you can pull in so many new contacts a month for a certain fee. Because also, as most people, if we're working with a smaller business, you don't want to, it's not necessarily a volume play, because they haven't got the resource, the downstream piece, in order to follow up if they generate a lot of attention and interest, and service those proposals, or even service end clients effectively. So it's about calibrating it to your business. I mean, obviously, it's quite a nice problem to have if you've got overwhelmed suddenly with a load of new inbound sales inquiries. but we don't want their first experience to be a poor one. So I guess it's important to factor that into your thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And I think we've kind of covered all the questions that came in on the chat. I just had one more. I really like the idea you said earlier about doing a session around bringing your customers and prospective customers together and bringing folks together. I mean, even though we can't do that in person in a virtual way, that was one of the kind of things that you said earlier on as an advice piece, and I just want to highlight that because I do think sometimes bringing those groups together is a good thing. And then I don't know whether there's anything you can share for this group. I mean, many of our businesses, you know, we're mostly SMEs, around the best way to track some of that data. And again, if you've got tools that people can use or like ideas of the best way to track some of these interactions, because I from talking to a lot of our business owners, it's like, yeah, we're doing this stuff, not necessarily sure if we're tracking what's happening to create the best metrics that will inform our decisions. And actually what a lot of your data showed is, your research showed, is actually the data is massively important. So I don't know if there's any top tips you've got on that.
Yeah. So we're an SME as Bright, so I totally understand where you're coming from, and I suppose we're quite a luxurious position because you've got a team of marketers, but they're all busy working on our clients, so it's a bit like cobbler's shoes. So we've definitely had to learn as well about how to do that as for ourselves, because a lot of our clients have a much more luxurious set of marketing technology to do that for them, and we use a CRM system. We use HubSpot, which is great for small business. I would say it's free as well. If you're a small business and you are using the kind of starter functionality, so it's worth thinking about at least bringing that into your business, or an alternative. There's quite a few CRMs on the market, but I'd say HubSpot is a great one, or Capsule. They're all quite low cost. In order to kind of bring together all your contact information and start to track activities a little bit more. You do have to pay in order to kind of get the more advanced data and insight stuff from people at HubSpot, but there's quite a few platforms out there, and if you're using Microsoft, for instance, then you might well already have access to things like Power BI as part of your Microsoft subscription. So it's worth investigating, and they've got some dashboards in there that you can I'd say fairly easily. I mean, just by putting a bit of training time in, really, to learn how to connect the data sources in, then you can create your own dashboard, so you can start to get a bit more of a 360 view. It's a problem that marketers universally struggle with, is the attribution and bringing together disparate data. It's been something that has plagued me my whole career, so there isn't an easy answer for that one. I think maybe that measuring what matters to you is important. So I go back to what you're measuring and talk about, what do I need to understand as a business owner versus as a marketer, and kind of keep an eye on that, and don't have too many metrics, because you just get overwhelmed in the detail and it's hard to see the wood for the trees.
I think as well, don't get distracted by vanity metrics. So we talk about that a lot. So don't get you really need to know what you want to look at in order to improve your marketing. So don't get distracted by how many follows or likes or that kind of data, because actually that's not always what you need. You should be looking at conversion or whatever it is that you need to be looking at, but don't get distracted by some of those.
Yeah, you can have a lot of followers, but they might not be the people you want.
They might not be valuable prospects. So yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we will close on that last piece of advice, which I'd also written down from earlier. So we're right on the hour. Thank you very much. This has been great. And thank you, everybody. I know a few of you have been putting different comments in the chat around different tools that you used and things that you like. So thank you for sharing them. We'll send a follow-up. As a reminder, the survey results aren't public until next Friday, so don't share any of them, and please do contact the Bright team if you'd like to do have a catch up with them and find out a bit more. This has been super interesting, and thank you so much to all of you for joining us on a Friday lunchtime to find out more. Big old topic for us all. And Zoe and Martha, thank you to you both for sharing the insights into the survey, but and all this, and then all this kind of practical advice in the last part of the session as well. That's been really helpful. So I'm just going to wish everybody a happy Friday. Have a brilliant weekend. Big thank you again, and please do contact the Bright team if you'd like to find out more, and we will follow up with the recording, so you can listen again, and with some of the resources that Zoe and Martha are going to share. But thank you,
Maggie.
and
Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.